Paragraph 2. Overview. Before we start, look at the list of recommendations for a perfect overview. Describe 2 or 3 main trends from the maps. Do not mention dates or values in your overview. Detailed information will be described in body paragraphs. Make comparisons. It's compulsory, as it's asked in the task. Remember, always start your overview from the phrase "overall it can be seen." It's the indicator for the examiner that you write an overview. Before we start, let us consider universal vocabulary for overview writing. Sentence starters. Over the 10 years period, the area had seen big changes, particularly to the rural areas which were redeveloped. From 1995 to 2020, a new high-rise building was constructed where a store once stood. The pasture and the forest had been significantly affected over the 2 decades and were replaced by the private sector. The town center had seen dramatic reconstruction over the period. The town used to be industrialized, but it had become considerably greener during the period. A new court course had been constructed with additional playground facilities over the years. Attention! In all the above examples, I used past perfect in passive form as long as it's related to my example. How to identify the trends from a map? Here I provide a reliable approach to find main trends. Objects such as houses, roads, forests, and infrastructure elements should be used to describe trends. How different objects can be used in the description of trends. Buildings. Look for any buildings on one map and compare them with the other map. Check if the buildings on one map were demolished, removed, enlarged, relocated in comparison with the other. Shops or schools tend to be relocated or added more often. Roads. Pay attention to the names of roads, as well as the widths of roads and lengths. Check if new roads were added or removed on one map compared to the other. Often, the main road can be elongated or connected to other roads, customarily railway added over time. Green areas. Before constructing the new housing, the forest should be cut down. These changes are pretty obvious and you should quickly see this. Sometimes new trees can be planted. Elements of infrastructure. Bridges, viaduct, factories can be illustrated or removed from maps. Bridges can connect 2 parts of a village and factories can be built. Please generalize the information. For example, the city or town from the map has become greener or densely populated due to the development. Let us look at the example. From the maps provided, we should identify the trends. In 1995, we can see a private sector on the west part of the map. We can see the forest and the pasture on the east part of the map. All of these details remind us that we are in the village. However, in 2020, we can see that the private sector was removed and in its place appeared a district of high-rise buildings. The forest and the pasture had been changed with the private sector. We can infer that Khabarovsk is no longer a village, but a town. This is going to be our first trend. The village had developed substantially, from a small residential sector to a town over the 25 years. In 2020, a bridge was built over the river. This fact makes us ponder that it resulted in the elongation of the main road, construction of the private sector, and playground. And this is going to be our second trend. The new infrastructure allowed to replace the forest and the pasture with housing and amenities. At this moment, we should group the trends that we have collected. All 2 trends must be included into our overview. Below the maps, you can observe the overview. Pay attention. According to the recommendations, the first phrase is "overall it can be seen." Then was included the first trend. The village had developed substantially from a small residential sector to a town over the 25 years. I used a specific word highlighted in yellow to ensure coherence and cohesion. this word interestingly. Lastly, I included the second trend. The new infrastructure replaced the forest and the pasture with housing and amenities. That is all for the overview.